Awesome. Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Haptics Club podcast. I'm Ashley, Strategic Partnerships at Titan Haptics, and I'm joined by the Haptics Club crew. We've got Manu from Unity, Eric from Razer, and Brian from SenseGlove. The Haptics Club is a team of people that have a passion for haptics. Our goal is to raise awareness of all the amazing tech and people in the haptic space and foster interesting discussions on the subject. We are happy to be here for another amazing season of the Haptics Club with even more surprises and exciting guests. Speaking of that, right now I'm joined with Rafal from Actronika and Kyle from Titan Haptics. There is much to learn and talk about. We'll divide the time with a 5-minute intro, around 25-minute technical deep dive, and of course, we'll cover challenges and opportunities in the haptics industry. Around the 30-minute mark or so, we will stop the recording and open up the floor to audience questions, and we'll talk about stuff that we can't talk about and you won't even get to listen to it on the podcast. So you're going to miss out on that 100%. Be sure to visit thehapticsclub.com and sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss out on the next live chat. And then last, for the opener, this season, we're really proud to be sponsored by the Haptics Industry Forum, a haptics association, which is created to streamline haptic standards and adoption, foster collaboration within the industry, and increase market awareness. So thank you to them for sponsoring us, keeping the lights on, keeping us caffeinated. But let's get to the fun stuff. Let's jump right in. So I'm going to hand it off to Manu and Eric. Let's do it.
Well, thank you, Ashley, for the opener. Rafal and Kyle, welcome very much at this episode of the Haptics Club. Let's start with a little bit of an introduction on you guys. Rafal, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you guys do at Actronika?
Sure. So hi, I'm Rafal, CTO of Actronika. I've been working on haptics since 10 years, last 10 years. Half of that time, I think, focusing on the hardware, even more than half, and challenges related to that development, technical issues, difficulties, and trying to combine this with the market needs and the different markets and different needs. So Actronika as a company today, we're shifting more towards products. We developed our own actuators that are available on the market, and today we trying to implement these actuators into the VR space with our haptic vest kinetic that is going to be launched very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafal. Very exciting. At the same time, today we have a second guest, Kyle from Titan Haptics. Hi, Kyle. Happy to have you here. Can you tell a little bit about yourself to the audience and explain what Titan Haptics is all about?
Yeah, glad to be here as well. So my name is Kyle. I'm the engineering lead at Titan Haptics. Been involved in the haptic space for about 5 to 7 years, I'd say. So Titan Haptics is, at its core, a company focused on taking the interesting and exciting world of magnetics and turning that into products. Our product line is the Titan TacHammer. We refer to this as an LMR, which stands for linear magnetic RAM. And so our technology is sort of it's almost a combination between a rumble motor, an LRA, and like a solenoid type of device all in one. And so we're trying to bring, really interesting haptics to tons of spaces, VR, AR, gaming, automotive, just consumer electronics in general, with our fun magnetics technology.
Thank you so much. So we're going to go to the next section of our podcast where we dive a little bit deeper into more interesting question around the actual haptics technology. So I will start with Rafal. What are the use cases that could benefit from a transparent haptics technology like the one that Actronika proposes?
Well, that's a very broad question, actually. So, I would, maybe it's easier to list applications that won't benefit from.
Yeah, do that. I like that.
Yeah, no, but we've as a company, we've been through quite a few different applications, different markets. So without going much into details, we've been working for, I think all of us have been working at some point for the automotive market. So these guys, they strive for good quality, high fidelity haptics that they want to replace all the buttons in the cockpit. So this is definitely VR. This is a huge emerging thing that will definitely take over. I think haptics will be just one of the main core functionalities for that market. But we've been through sex tech, we've been through all the wellness applications, cinema. So yeah, it's a huge, very broad question, and I think you can actually, for most of the applications, you can imagine an application of haptics as another sense for the and to create that immersive experience. This I think for any application we can even exercise that. We can just imagine an application and see if we can come up with how haptic can be integrated. But yeah, I think it's any device that you are physically in contact with, you can think of haptic interface or just adding a haptic feature to that interaction, and it will be a benefit to that interaction. Kyle, I'm not sure if you what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think you're spot on. I think at the beginning you said it's better to point out applications where haptics like aren't a good fit almost. So I think kind of expanding on that. Both Titan and Actronika are focused sort of on that more high definition end of haptics, and I think that's great for applications where users are trying to get a level of enhancement from their content, a level of immersion in like the VR kind of space. And I think there's also a lot of applications in like accessibility. So you look at people who are hearing or sight impaired, and as you said, Rafal, it's a sense, right? So touch is a sense, and so if you have a sense that maybe lacking in one way or another, you can kind of lean on touch for additional support there as well, which is really cool. I think expanding on that, in your comment earlier, Rafal, there are applications in which the haptics only need to be super simple. And in that case, like a simple buzzer click could do, and that's all you need. And I think that legacy technologies are great for that. But once you start getting beyond into, more interesting uses for haptics and feedback, I think that's when you get into the, next generation devices.
Thanks for this. It's great to see it from a bottom up, from a actuator upwards. So having a little bit of experience of integrating wideband actuators into products, there is always the mechanical challenges, the other things. And one thing that from a consumer electronics company like Razer we always strive is that first things that we say is that haptics does not have to disrupt the customer experience of a product without haptics. It's the first things. And if it does, that's a no-go. And just after that, then we can measure the value that you can bring to the customer and understand if the price point or at least the opportunity of the new product makes sense. Okay. Just example, we launched today the Naga V2 Pro. It has a magnetorheologic technology inside. And if you don't know what there is inside, you have no idea that it's haptics. I guarantee it's no idea. We are on testing that. And that's basically the kind of experience we strive for on a consumer electronics, which is that you don't need to educate people. You just need to bring more value. And because through haptics, you bring it, but this is haptics is cool. So you need to buy it for that, right? Can you maybe share a couple of examples on both sides? One couple of examples, Actronika and on Titan, where you were able to get something similar, let's say, that you say for a customer was completely transparent and they didn't even realize it was haptics, and just haptics came up as an added value, and it was like flow perfectly on the implementation side, let's say.
I can give I completely get that. So quite a few examples when we work with the automotive, we as a company we have done quite a few projects with people from the automotive market, and even it's not only the projects, but even when we do trade shows related to the subject, we have quite a few demos around the question of a button, how to simulate the correctly button on the surface. So basically you replace the whole mechanical system through vibration, right? So we most probably all know the concept. We just measure the force, and while the force reaches the certain threshold, you just send the vibration. And the funny part of most of these deliveries, so the projects or even meeting people at trade shows, so we show these panels. Behind this, like you mentioned, a bit of mechanical integration that you have to think correctly, and the way you integrate the actuator, this is something you have to do it right. And then a bit of software and the vibration you send, so the effect. But the thing is that you show these to people, they come, they click, and they say, so what? Because so you have to explain them because there's a button. They're like, yeah, it's clicking. When I press on the button, it's always clicking. So if I press here, it's clicked. Great. But so it's so obvious. It is so well done, meaning that it actually emulates the button. So they don't really see what's the added value, because the button is supposed to be here and it is here. So great. And then you have to actually explain this is not an actual button. It is a haptic thing, and you have to deactivate. So we basically, all our demos now have a deactivate haptic button. When you deactivate it, then push it on the surface and nothing happening, that's where they get it. So I think this is what you were saying, and that's what is how I understand that. This is that quality of haptics that is so close or identical with actual interaction they are looking for. So they don't actually notice that this is a different way of creating the same sensation. So I
mean, that's exactly spot on. And the question is, and this is why I ask this question, because really you cannot do this with non-HD technology, or at least it's really, really hard to do it with non-HD technology. Back to Kyle. Can you share some examples like that happen like this, magical way that just click and work and the customer pick it up?
Yeah, I mean, I think almost in a similar way, we have a demo experience where customers will be able to basically have a hands-on device that has our technology integrated into it. And we'll show them some demo content that has audio, haptics, video, sort of a full experience. And people experience it, they think it's pretty cool, whatever. And then we run through the exact same demo, but we turn the haptics off. And same thing as Rafal saying, it's like they're like, oh, like what happened? Like something's broken. It just doesn't feel right. It's almost like if you're in your car, I don't know if you've ever played with like the bass and treble settings in your car. Try going in there and turn the bass down to 0. It's like so wrong. It's like the worst thing that you could ever experience in a car. And that's kind of the same thing when it comes to haptics. I think another really cool thing is that tying back into the fact that touch and haptics really is a sense. One of our other demos, we have a heartbeat emulation, and this triggers what's called like a somatic response. And so we can kind of like, using that haptic feeling, start to have the user have their own heart rate become more noticeable and like kind of induce feelings of anxiety in our demo. It could be also used to induce feelings of calm as well. And that's also like, an experience where it elevates it from just something that's like buzzing to something where it's like, oh, this is like connecting with my emotions. This is how connecting with how I feel and like how my body is responding to its environment. I think it's a really cool experience.
I absolutely love those examples. Emotional design, and that comes back to what Eric was saying, like when you can have an experience that elevate the user feeling, but without them noticing the technology aspect, that's good. I think the quote was something like good design is invisible or something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'll move to the next one, and I'll start with Rafal. Actually, both could answer that, but let's start with Rafal. Where do you see technologies like the Sony DualSense which is present also in the PSVR 2 that just got announced last week. It's also in the DualSense current controller for PS5. Where do you see that technology within the next few years? The next 5 years, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's Sony using the presence and the audience that they address. They basically did to gaming and hopefully VR what Apple has done to mobile and to haptics or in general with the Taptic engine. So I think like I remember trying to explain haptics just before Taptic engine came out and trying to just understand and put all that vocabulary there and people so that we can even just to talk about this, just to explain all the background and just a year or two after Taptic engine was out, it's like I like iPhone, and they're like, oh, I get it. So now it's gaming. It's basically it would happen. It's the same thing. We tried as Actronika, we've been working with people in that market, trying to showcase some haptic mouse with HD haptics or joysticks and so on, and and now with everyone is just this became right away a reference. So I think within 5 years from now it will be everywhere. Basically, this will replace whatever haptic, whatever rumble we could like Nintendo that have done something in that field. I think it will be just everywhere. So the HD technology, so VCM or any technology that can fulfill that requirement for HD haptics will be everywhere, and we see that also with
sorry
Meta.
To be contrarian here. Question, let's say the DualSense is great because it has high fidelity. However, on the brute force side, has nothing to do with the rumble, right? The rumble, when it's rumbling, it's going around, it moves you basically, right? Because they use this QERM at different frequencies, and they generate this basically chaotic pattern, and it gets crazy. But as a sheer amount of vibrations, the DualSense is pretty weak at the end of the day. Would you balance out on the user perspective the need of this not in control effect, which is what the dual shock is, compared to the quality of the refined experience that the design vibration gives? Do you feel that the design part would be replacing completely that need of auto control, or would we lose something by going to VCM? And of course, this is also for Kyle as a question after Rafal.
Yeah. Kyle, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I'll step in here. I think that's a great point. I think PlayStation putting forward this technology as the de facto haptics experience in their devices, I think will raise, a raising tide lifts all ships. So I think we will see that adoption of wideband motors. But to your point, Eric, I think it's also critical that devices, as we take haptics more seriously and as we incorporate it into more devices, we'll probably end up using multiple technologies within a single hardware device. I think we're already seeing that, for example, if I'm not mistaken, the Oculus Pro controllers have both a VCM and an LRA in it. So it's like, if you have an experience that needs both that chaotic, crazy rumble that's going to make your hands numb, and it needs some control over fine textures and experiences, at this stage, we will have to rely on multiple technologies within a single device.
I like that.
I would, if you don't mind, ahead, I think there's also one thing that people, they don't really had a chance to experience that high fidelity haptics, so they got used to something, and I because from my experience, whenever you turn off that rumble, you start noticing more things, and that's where the haptic design comes into picture, because you really have to design these things in order to be noticeable. But the thing is that I'm talking from my own experience, is we have demos where we try to push that envelope because people, they're always asking, can this be stronger? Can this vibrate more? So we try to do that, because eventually we try to address the client needs, but sometimes they don't really know what they need. In any case, and while just turning down that volume and letting people experience something, they start noticing that fine difference between different effects and the design intention. So I think it might be also just a sort of a shift from people who, I completely agree with you, Kyle. Multi-technology devices, that's also definitely the future. But I think that people, they might actually just appreciate more that less vibration and more fine design or eventually. So I'm saying this might take a bit of get used to.
Yeah, that's actually very true. I feel that I am in that role, and it's funny because I worked in haptics. I know the difference, but it's true that DualShock always felt like, if you're not watching the podcast on YouTube, you're missing on Eric's interpretation of what the rumble is. And literally that's the feeling, right? And once I played with the DualSense, I felt that exact definition that Rafal said. Like, it felt intentional, it felt design polished. But it's true that on the rumble side, it's weak. But then to each their own, some people, like, they hate it depending on what game they play or what experience they're providing. I think here, why I was asking about the PSVR 2 is because of the XR aspect when it comes to designing in the XR or having more intricate feelings and effects that can allow you to do precise modeling. For example, in 3D, when we see application like Substance Modeler, like, God forbid the PSVR 2 is mostly for gaming, but there is Dreams, for example, on PS4 right now. Hopefully it will get updated, and I feel like this game will benefit from additional haptics on the controller that are more fine-tuned. So thank you for providing both those contrasts, and thank you, Eric, for adding to that question, because I think it makes it more relevant. I'll let you ask the next one.
Yeah, so we talk about the transparency of the Actronika technology, but let's go back to Titan Haptics tech, right? You have magnetic, but it's the concept of Titan, correct me if I'm wrong, it's also based on the impact technology, right? It's based on this and can bring back maybe some of this chaotic or brutal haptics effect that maybe the ERM have. So as everything, if you've designed for fidelity, like it's relatively easy to control because you can characterize relatively easy the system, right? Because it's a linear system or relatively linear systems or harmonic system, and you can characterize it. You have your resonance systems and whatnot. In your case, you have this impact and magnetic forces, but beside that, but you have this impact that generate, a sharp change of kinetic energy into the system, which might have some control challenges. And my question is, do you give up something on the fidelity side or the easy controllability side for the actuator to get this brutal acceleration when you get into the sharp shock?
Yeah, it's a good question. So just to provide some background on the technology, the way that the TacHammer works is that we use what we call a magnetic array to balance the system. I think the closest parallel technology is like a maglev train. So it's like this big train, floating on essentially magnets that keep it suspended above the ground. So our technology is sort of the same way. We have a moving mass inside of a chamber, and that mass is basically suspended in 3D space with our magnetic array. And so we've got a couple things working there. We have a passive system that prevents the movement of the mass without our control, and then we have our input into the electromagnetic coil in the system. So there's just to touch on your question. Yes, this is a very high transient response that we get, but because we have that fine control from the electromagnet, we're able to apply some type of basically control signal to prevent unwanted characteristics from happening. So for example, you could imagine, we're charging up this coil, we're making this big impact, which feels like depending on the scale of the model, either a realistic physical button click, or in some of our larger models, like a gunshot. And then we're able to apply basically braking currents to make sure that, that hammer isn't going to continue to cause additional impacts or unwanted response from the system.
So let me develop on it. That means that, of course, you get currents. However, you have like a cooldown, a time cooldown where you need to apply this braking system, where at that moment in time, you cannot apply what you want, basically imagine, because you need to basically put it back in control, make it back in the harmonic range of the systems, and then you can take it back and make it work. Okay, So it's nice to see, because let's say if the ERMs are completely out of control actuators that brutalize the experience, there is the Actronika side, which is more like super pure voice coil, more like hi-fi systems, and in the middle there is this system of Titan that you can do sharp clicks that maybe you can't do with an Actronika actuator of the same size, of course, because if you size up, then you can get higher acceleration, and that you can get these nice super sharp clicks and let's say also high fidelity, but you need to have a trade-off in between where you need to get the sensation. Now it's great to see, because there is wide spectrum of application where one or the other can be the best fit. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. My next one is for Rafal, and then Kyle, you can answer as well. So optical actuators are being used in a wide variety of industries and applications. Up till now, what is your favorite implementation of your hardware?
Of my hardware, well, there's nothing on the market. From our company, we are developing the vest at this point, and to be honest, this is the most interactive piece of hardware that we have ever come up with, and I see a great potential behind the vest or any multi-channel system, because it's actually, this is the main features. So we can control up to 20 of these actuators, and that specialization of things is a part of what I would call success, because we basically manage, while you can manage the signal, so getting that high fidelity, and then you spread this all over your body, and you get control over that. This is what makes it very unique in a sense. So far, that would be to me the answer to that question.
Thank you. What about you, Kyle? What is your most interesting implementation right now?
Yeah, I think, whenever you make a new demo, it's like we do a lot of prototyping in our labs, and like whenever you make a new demo, there's always like the moment of like something magical, and you're like, oh my god, like new form factor, new toys, new ideas. So it's always fun. But I love that whole like designing process, and we worked with a company, Striker VR, on one of their devices, and in the development phase of trying to meet their requirements for our technology, we built these like giant actuators that were just like ridiculous, and so like you would hold it and it's like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 inches long, like totally beefy, super heavy, and it would just like shake you so much, and you put it on the table and it would make the table like jump up and down. And so it was just like a super fun way to play with haptics on like the most ridiculous scale ever. So that was honestly so fun and so ridiculous. It was just like a constant joy the whole time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kyle. So I think this is a good moment to pivot to the next section of the podcast, which is the future of haptics, where we together with our guests dream about the future, 5, 10, as far as you want, years in the future, what will this whole industry look like? And Kyle, as you said, the haptic actuators, the whole haptic space is changing so fast. We were wondering with your actuators, with your products, do you see any new emergent spaces or industries in which your products could be used in the far or short future? Let's start with Kyle.
Yeah, good question. I think, and this ties back to some of our conversations previously about PlayStation and all that. Haptics has been around in mainstream technology, I don't know, 20 years, and it hasn't changed that much over that period of time. And so as we're starting to see the technology transition into these more advanced types of actuators, we're starting to see the push for content supporting that. I think that the way that we see people who do sound design, design music and experiences like that, I think we will eventually see that come to haptics as well. Because it is its own creative form. And I think we'll definitely see that to continue to emerge. And I think that's going to be, spurred on by companies like Sony choosing to use advanced haptics and companies like Titan and Actronika creating interesting actuators and interesting use cases. So I only see that continuing to advance more and more. As markets like EV and drones and robotics and all that kind of stuff expands, I expect that haptics will just go along with that and continue to provide value to those industries.
Thank you, Kyle. Rafal, what is your take on that? Where do you see your technology move in the future?
Well, so I think that a few things. So like you said, 5, 10, 15 years or 50 years from now, I think the short term, I see definitely a push for all sorts of devices. And during the design process, they realize what haptics can do for them. And they tend to build new devices where the haptics is being not in the center, not necessarily in the center, but somewhere very close to that. So I think we'll see more and more small devices, well-being that you're supposed to use every day, that they will get haptics just to enhance that experience. But this is short term. Eric is also a part of the standardization committee, people who are working on that. Actronika is being a part of it as well. So we see that if we manage within 5 next year to nail it down and start. Kyle mentioned content. This is once the content becomes sort of agnostic to the devices, we can definitely will see a huge growth of devices integrating haptics, because they'll be right away compatible with the content that is already existing. So the people it will be no brainer just to add haptics, because this will bring an extra community to their new device. This will be, I think, that 5 to 10 years, and later on I'll be more than happy if we live in the world close to shown in the Ready Player One, right, where the haptics, that interaction through the suit and all the possible technologies and living in the metaverse. This is something that it's a big word today. Everyone is saying that, but haptics is definitely a huge part of that idea, how we can interact with people while being 1,000 kilometers away. So I think this is also something that we can think as this future application of haptics that will be a core feature for this sort of application. So this is a rough take on.
Let me just comment on this, Rafal, and thanks for raising the topics. So there is a huge news that is going to happen tomorrow, which is actually that the community draft of the MPEG haptic standards goes to balloting. That means that it's done. I mean, this major spec of the first haptic standard for encoding an haptic experience, it's agreed upon, and it covers full body haptics, multiple actuators, and cover HD haptics, multiple perception. So it's a pretty strong thing. It's quite solid, quite fundamental. And that's, I think it's an incredible stepping stone, because on that we can build design tool, basically, because you're not quite sure that after a few years, the company that is doing that, if it disappears, the standard doesn't disappear, still there, right? And it's not proprietary to one company like AHAP from Apple, which is great, but it have a lot of assumption of how the system is, because it's controlled by Apple itself. And on the other way around, like PS5 APIs are not open. I mean, you can hack them, but you can't use them actually from a legal perspective. So I feel this is a really big thing, and around which hopefully other standard will coalesce or will be able to make cross compatibility. And the activity that with Rafal we are doing with OpenXR definitely leverage part of this. Because the last things that you want is that an OpenXR standard is not compatible with an MPEG standard, right? That would be just relatively stupid, or super stupid in many different ways. So hopefully there will be this domino effect where there is this like whole chain that makes sense. And so who builds design tools knows that they build design tools for systems that in 5 years from now, hopefully will be used, right? And I do really feel that there is these chicken and egg problems. Will solve it at a certain point, or at least having because if you have interfaces which are known, you can decouple the problem. You can decouple the content problem from the hardware problem, at least till a certain level. And so you can get businesses ongoing on two separate sites without it needs to be completely tied. Sorry, there's more comments.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. So I want to just ask kind of like the final closing question. Eric's getting us all hyped as always. Final closing question relating to the future of haptics for each of you. Where do you think, or what do you think is like a really important point or topic, or just something that the community should know that maybe isn't as commonly known in the industry, just about the future, things to look forward to, technology that's interesting? It could be, you could take it from kind of any angle, but I'm just curious about kind of where you see that and what people should know. As a closing thought. We'll start with Rafal.
That's a interesting question. What people should know? Yeah, I have quite a few. this is well. So there's what I think about is whenever we talk to people about haptics, there's no common knowledge of haptics. Well, for most of the people who are not from the industry, they have very little or no knowledge about haptics. So they discover it with us. Then there are people who are interested, so they are professionally involved or interested on the subject, and we would, on the professional basis, or would talk to us, and they will ask questions, valid questions. But then when you want to integrate haptics, most of the time they would ask for impossible, and this is quite a complicated question or a task if you have to explain to a client that, well, this is not what you can do. And so it would be great if eventually these discussions will be, more around stuff that are actually feasible, because Kyle, most probably you have people from the haptic hardware community and industry. They know that for a fact that there are some physical limitations of these. So you cannot make just an actuator that is almost non-visible and can do all these impacts that you will just fall on the ground while feeling them. And this is most of the time what clients are asking for. So it's a complicated subject, and it would be great if that eventually comes, I don't know, as maybe it's part of that education, haptic education that should happen. But I don't expect people to get so deep in that knowledge. But it would be great if we actually can imagine either this gets so popular and everyone at some point just gets some peace of mind around haptics, and then if we get to the point of talking of something that we can imagine a new application, then we just start from this very the same ground rules of physics. So yeah, I think, but this might be a bit off the question you asked, but this is definitely what I would like in the near future, whenever we get more into haptic applications, that all the stuff, that the basics of haptics will be already there. And I see that with clients I work with. We've managed to work with a couple of clients through a few POCs or developments, and we see how they mature in a sense around haptics, that each new project that's converging to what we want is much quicker than in the early projects, where we were really asking for the sky, and like, well, we cannot do that.
Yeah,
I appreciate that so much. And just a side note, I just want to say thanks for helping justify the Haptics Club, because that's really one of our goals is that education factor. Because yeah, it's a gambit of knowledge and understanding. But yeah, Kyle, please, jump right in.
I was just going to say that the customer requirement is that it has to be 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter, uses 1 microamp, and it produces like 6,000 Gs. And you're just like, I don't know if the physics work out on that one.
And don't forget about that it costs nothing, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. Actually, we pay you to integrate it. Yeah.
No, but there is, I think one of the things here that is great is that from a marketing side, ultra haptics is that. It's non-existent, right? It's just in the air. And that I feel
right.
that generated a bit of expectations for other haptics technology, let's say.
Yeah. I think though, actually, getting back to your question, I'm going to take this in a totally different direction. This is, get ready for some controversy. I'm a firm believer that like technology has momentum. And I think every generation there's some of the pushback between like there's too much time on the screens, and don't play video games, you're going to be violent, and I think that there's the constant balance between too much technology and not enough. And I think that, over time, that's only going to progress. Right now we're kind of in the early stages of VR, but, I'm a firm believer that these types of technologies will become commonplace in the future. Humans and technology will only more and more commingle, and, start to meld together over time. And I think that haptics is a really important part of that. So much of Manuel, what work you're doing around AR and stuff like that, it's, having a visual experience where you're bringing digital content into, your own reality. And, obviously video is a big part of that, audio, and haptics is part of that too. We're bringing digital sensations, digital touch, into your physical reality. That technology, like I said, has been unchanged for a little while. We're kind of on the forefront here and trying to bring that into modern devices, and people after us will continue to push it as well. And it will become more and more advanced over time. I think even looking towards stuff at like, direct electrical stimulation, which is some stuff that we're seeing right now. And then super far facing, where we've got like neural links, we're still going to have haptics. They just might be in your brainstem.
Yes. Actually, my favorite word in the haptics landscape is multisensory. Also, just a drop of knowledge that I've discovered a couple of years ago in Australia. I was at Sydney for, I think, the HIC. And there was a topic around embedded haptics or embodied experiences. And there is a lot of researchers on haptics from within, not necessarily on your brain only, but also in your guts, bacteria, micro robots pulsating and moving and changing your inner bacteria, which is also part of yourself, even though they are not sentient like you. And it's very interesting, I think, to think about haptics, not just from an external touch perspective, from an internal touch as well. Just wanted to share that.
Very interesting. Cool.
Awesome. Well, unfortunately, reached the end. We made this one a little longer, just because it's such a fun conversation, and we're able to stretch it out, thankfully. So, but at the same time, for folks who are listening, we cut off the audio at this point. We jam. We have a Q&A, which is awesome. So you're missing out on that. But I want to thank our supporters again. The Haptics Industry Forum is an amazing organization that really brings together the industry and is all about adoption and standards. So they really foster that collaboration with haptics companies like ourselves. So if you want to get involved, check out hapticsif.org. And we want to thank you for also helping us to inspire us, to continue to support us with notes of thanks and gratitude, messages about episodes you really love, and even folks who tip us that caffeinated us. We appreciate that. We appreciate you. That's on our website. So the hapticsclub.com is where you'll find the next episodes. That's a banger of a song, side note. And of course, quick reminder, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn. You can find us pretty much anywhere and everywhere. Spotify, Apple Podcast. That's where you'll find the Haptics Club. But for now, we will say adieu, and thanks to our amazing guests for sharing your insights, more about your technologies, and just like your insights that people maybe have never heard of before, and will hopefully plant a seed that inspires them for the project they're working on, and maybe ask slightly different questions in reality. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thank you.